episode 7 of Two-Rilla Talk. Once again, my name is Kelsey Jean-Baptiste. Let's quickly run through this disclaimer because we have a lot to talk about in this episode. Any views or opinions represented or expressed here do not necessarily reflect the position of Two-Rilla Talk. Any content provided by guests are of their opinions and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual. This past week, Zimbabwe has been in the news. I had the pleasure of speaking with Makomborero Harusevishe, human rights activist, pro-democracy campaigner, and former Zimbabwe National Student Union Secretary General. But before we get into his interview, I want to run through some of the reasons of why Zimbabwe has been in the news. According to many news organizations, Zimbabwe is going through a human rights crisis. There's corruption, political and economic instability. The military and the government are suppressing peaceful protests. Zimbabwe is also facing a food and health crisis. Zimbabweans are protesting government leadership, corruption, and economic mismanagement. Some of the demands from the protesters and activists are dismantling Zimbabwe's African National Union Patriotic Front, which started in 1980, led by leader Robert Mugabe. Protests and activists also say that Emmerson Mnangagwa has promised democracy, but his government has been accused of many abuses of power. Makomborero Harusevishe is going to get into more on the corruption, more on the ways Zimbabweans are feeling right now. So why are people protesting in Zimbabwe?
There is poverty in Zimbabwe. There is the unprecedented human rights abuses. In terms of poverty, over 3/4 of the population are surviving below the poverty line. In Zimbabwe, 90% of the employable, citizens, they are unemployed. Our economy is almost entirely now informal. People are now vendors. People are now informal traders. The formal part of our economy is collapsed, and this is due to corruption. Then number 2 is due with the police brutality, human rights abuses. In response, it's natural for angry people, it's natural for people who were promised during elections that will provide employment, that will stabilize the economy, that you will provide good health care, that you have dignified lives. Current regime, which came through basically it came through a military coup in 2017 November. And the promises of both the coup and there's also the promises of the 2018 elections, which were also rigged. People knew that they were subverting the constitution. People knew that the coup was an illegal power takeover exercise. So clearly things have gotten worse. Yeah. So that's why people are protesting. We have now seen that in the previous regime, people would get arrested, imprisoned. But right now, you get abducted. Even if you do as little as tweet criticizing the government, you won't get your fair share of justice in the court of law. The reason why people are disgruntled is that all other avenues of illuminating their voices, yes, they shoot us in the streets, but we feel that we can regain the lost civic space.
And how has this affected the culture of people in Zimbabwe?
Number 1, we no longer feel the government to be for the people. It's now clear that the government has declared war against the people. It is now clear that Zimbabwe now belongs for the few who have control of arms. We even have agriculture models based on the military. We are trying all we can. People are disappearing. People are imprisoned over crimes they did not even, commit. There's need for proper intervention into Zimbabwe. And the people now, their reaction, it's fluctuating between hopelessness and the need to fight.
And what has been the response from President Emmerson Mnangagwa?
He has dug in terms of repression. He has dug in terms of turning into his default mode of violence. The streets are locked right now by the military, by the armed police, armed soldiers. People are beaten on a daily basis. People are getting arrested on a daily basis. And I want to put this to you. In Zimbabwe, the number of people since the corona pandemic began, the number of people who have been arrested in Zimbabwe, they far surpass the official figures of those who have been tested by the government for coronavirus. When he released our names, declaring us terrorists on national television, and that we are wanted by the police. But what had we done? We had simply tweeted that there should be stop to corruption, not to state capture. We need better lives. Free the journalists who have exposed corruption. What they are now doing, I can tell you, alarm is raised in all provinces of people abducting, civilians, of people abducting citizens. Emerson Mnangagwa's son, he is a member of parliament. He actually he recorded videos training militia. There have been atrocities committed, people abducted. There's also a case of even a pregnant woman who was tortured. And the last time I saw her, she was bleeding continuously. No arrests are being made. So Mnangagwa's response was to go into default mode. And the default mode, we saw it in the 1980s. We saw it in 2008. Robert Mugabe was defeated in an election. He partly conceded to defeat. But then Emerson Mnangagwa, the current president, he described people to be bad apples, to be terrorists. And thousands were killed. He ran an operation called the long sleeve, short sleeve. They will ask you whether you want your arm to be left as a long sleeve or a short sleeve. If you say short sleeve, they cut it by the elbow. If you say long sleeve, they will remove the wrist.
And are there specific demands being made by protesters and community members?
The post cover that, no, how can we say no to corruption when the archbishops of corruption are those that are in power? They are benefiting from corruption, and they have serious motivations not to end corruption because they have become billionaires due to corruption. Their only non-occupation was to be government ministers, was to be government officials. They don't run any meaningful business, but they are now billionaires. Demanding an end to corruption was demanding better lives based on the promises were given by the same government officials in the election manifestos, based on what we deserve according to our constitution. I've also come to understand that for closure to ever come out, it would need this current system to be overturned.
In your opinion, what are some practical ways that those who live in Zimbabwe and also internationally may show their support and help?
Number one, with people like you, it's also about exposing to the world so that people really know or become aware, not by the colonial regime, not by slave masters, but by fellow blacks. Then number two, they also are people who can even influence policies of other governments, influence the policies of international organizations. Because at the end of the day, they use those monies to sponsor and fuel the repression machinery. The world, when dealing with Zimbabwe, they should do using their conscience, not interests. People are dying. Are more people who are dying of hunger than people who have been killed with the bullets by the regime. There are more people who are dying of cholera because they can't even treat water. More people have died due to malaria than to coronavirus. The people in the national community, it's time they start dealing with Zimbabwe based on, morals, based on, their, humanity. Humanity must lead at this point.
I just actually thought of one last question. How do activists and yourself, how do you stay safe?
I want to tell you one thing. I'm 28 right now. And how I have managed to survive, basically it was because I don't have a family. So my life is not stationary. I don't sleep at the same place for 3 consecutive nights. It's a difficult thing, but I've discovered that that's how my life is like. I'm more of a nomad. That's how I survive things to do with abductions. And I also make sure that I can no longer afford even the life of going out, having drinks with friends in clubs or whatsoever. If I want to have drinks, we buy them, send someone to buy them. We go at a friend's house, we close the doors, we enjoy, we catch up. So that's how I've managed to survive. But if you check others who are victims of abductions, are people who have families. They can't dump their families. Or number two, it's people who also take things lightly. That if you see the same face in two different places. Don't think it's a coincidence. Someone's definitely following you. So you need a certain level of paranoia to survive. Also, to make sure that where you are, it's a public space. If it's better they take you dead than they take you alive.
Once again, thank you, Macomberero Harusivishe. This is just part 1 of Do You Know What's Happening in Zimbabwe? Part 2 is going to be coming out next week. But please like and share, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and comment. Put some comments underneath these videos so I know what you're thinking and I hear your thoughts. Can't wait to talk to you next week. Have a good one. Bye.